Hiya everyone, it's LJ Longo. Welcome to a slightly unusual episode of Paperback Radio. Normally, a weird host invites you to dive into stories. Okay, so maybe the weird host is still here. Who knows? Anyway, today, Lane and I are stepping out of our usual format to tell you about something exciting. Paperback Productions, our new Substack. If you're not familiar with Substack, it's a platform that sends out newsletters, and ours will include everything from the episodes of the podcast, Lane's scripts, my serialized novels, and a column both of us write that is all about revision and writing and living a creative life. The paid subscription is exactly the same as the free one for now. We added it as a way for those of you who want to support the show to do so. Maybe you feel like buying me a fancy coffee or Lane a couple of Diet Cokes. I think you can probably get about 3 of those for $5 these days. And who knows, maybe down the road we'll be able to offer some cool perks like full cast productions, live events, or dare I say it, slightly more focused conversations between Lane and I. But for now, this is our first fifth Friday. What follows is a conversation where Lane and I talk about our artistic influences, tropes we love, and really it's just an intro into who we are outside of the stories you've heard us tell. So grab a coffee or a Diet Coke and enjoy.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. I'm testing, 1, 2, 3. Lisa is so very pretty. Lisa is so very pretty.
Lane is a troll and a water thief. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
I love my wife. I only have nice things to say about her, including how delicious this glass of water is. It doesn't look like the microphone caught it, but I just drank from her water glass. I drank her milkshake.
It's water. I could get you a glass.
Nah, it tastes better when I'm stealing it.
It's because it's my water from the Brita filter that you don't like.
No, it's because I'm stealing it.
Anyways, hello everybody. My name is LJ Longo.
I'm trying to put down this
Here,
glass.
do you want a coaster?
Oh, thank you. I do want a coaster. Anyway, my name is LJ Longo.
And I'm Lane McLeod Jackson. Paperback Productions.
That was a pretty good impression. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's get into this because someone has to take this seriously.
Oh my god, you. I don't know if this is going to be a thing that we continue to do because neither of us are taking this particularly seriously, but that's just kind of who we are.
I'm drunk.
You are not.
I've got 3 things of whiskey directly inserted into my brain.
Lane Jackson is a teetotaler, everyone. I'm just going to fact correct you the whole time.
You're going to fact correct me?
Fact. Sorry, I shall enunciate my words.
I live in a post-truth world, and I always have. This is not new for me. I've never let reality get in the way of a good story. Babe, you being the organized one of us, the plotter, if you will, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So the first kind of topic I had to cover is what are your influences, Lane McLeod Jackson, award-winning playwright?
My first influence, obviously, because I'm an American, is George Washington, especially cherry chopping. I hate cherry trees. You see it throughout my work. They're pretentious.
Cherry trees?
Cherry trees.
Okay.
They don't provide nearly enough cherries. Like, they have one job. And I think they need to be taught a lesson. Were you referring to how I live my life or my artistic influences?
You know, I was going with artistic influences here. I will demonstrate.
Sure.
One of my early influences is the author Diana Wynne Jones.
What tree did she attack?
She did not attack a tree. Well, actually, she attacked many trees because she is an author and her books were in print. Because I don't know that the internet existed when she started. Actually, I know it didn't exist when she started. I can just say that very confidently. Diana Wynne Jones is, for those who don't know, the author of Howl's Moving Castle, which was adapted, of course, by Studio Ghibli, Miyazaki. It's just a fantastic book. My favorite conspiracy theory about it is that the movie is Howl's perspective on their love story, and the book is Sophie's perspective. And the influence it had on me is I've always loved fairy tale. I've always loved fantasy. That was kind of the first book that showed me that you could really mess around with it. It's a fairy tale world, is also a portal fantasy, but Howl is a PhD student that literally comes back and forth between fairyland and Wales. He's a big fan of the Welsh rugby team. He wears a jacket that Sophie talks about in the, what strange and eldritch symbols on his back. And it's just funny and interesting, and I didn't see, it was cool to see that kind of play. I love Sir Terry Pratchett. I love his writing advice. He literally wrote The Color of Magic, he said 300 words a day, and he did the math ahead of time. It's like, if I do just 300 words a day, I'll have a whole novel at the end of a year. And I just love that mentality, the discipline involved in it. And also, The Color of Magic is a fantastic book. Terry Pratchett led me to Neil Gaiman via Good Omens. but I didn't even know it yet. Like I read Good Omens, really impressed and amused by it when I was in high school. But I didn't discover Neil Gaiman until some years later when I saw Fragile Things on a bookshelf. And because I love anthologies, I picked it up. And it was in reading bits of Fragile Things that I realized, oh, well, this is that guy who wrote with Terry Pratchett. And I think it's really funny because now Neil Gaiman is obviously one of my favorite authors. I've only ever been to two fan events. One was Neil Gaiman reading in Philadelphia, and the other was the 2024 Welcome to Night Vale, which is another one of my huge influences. Welcome to Night Vale is just a really weird and really wonderful serial fiction podcast. Hey, audience. Since Lane and I spend most of this ragging on each other, I also think it's important to mention that Lane McLeod Jackson is the one who sent me to both of these fan events. He insisted that I go to the Neil Gaiman reading in Philadelphia, even though we couldn't afford 2 tickets. And the Welcome to Night Vale live tour of the attic was actually a birthday present that he gave me this year. So yeah, that's Lane. He's wonderful. Okay, well, that's enough nice things to be said about Lane. I'm going to go back to talking about my influences now. And that leads me to my love of anthologies. I will buy any anthology. Some of my favorites are Sympathy for the Devil, Zombies versus Unicorns, but I have a whole collection of like, here's a fairy tale anthology, here's Japanese myth. So I have a whole bunch of short story anthologies I love. Various romance novels like Aeneas Nin, Nan Ryan are favorites of mine. I have The Hobbit on this list, even though my introduction to quest fantasy was actually R.A. Salvatore. Louis Sachar, who wrote Holes, which really influenced me because I'm like, oh, right, you can have a novel that then becomes a movie. And as a kid, that was like a big deal for me to see that. So those are my influences. Lane McLeod Jackson, do you have a serious answer?
George Washington, because I'm an American. So I'm going to go corny to start off with just because it's also true. I come from a very strange collection of mole people referred to as the McLeod Jacksons.
Thank you for having me in that group as well.
Along with the human sacrifices, we have a really specific set of interests. So when I talk about my influences, it's kind of impossible not to talk about it in the context of 100 in-jokes between my sister, my mother, myself, in this work. So,
And your dad just had no part of the humor at all.
I didn't mention him.
No, you said your
That's
sister, your mother, and yourself, and I was like,
that sounds right. No, that sounds right. He's so what he does is he suggests something. We all see it 3 years later and say, "Why didn't you tell us about this?" Anyway, he's a broken man.
but who would win in a fight, really?
Yeah, that's the question. If he ever gets public, the question he loves is who would win in a fight. So, what I was trying to say about my beloved family is that we all have these various interests and we all sort of bring each other into it. So, when I list my influences, it's going to sort of come out of nowhere. First is Jane Austen by a mile.
Mhm.
I think I've seen and read Pride and Prejudice more than almost any other work. Certainly seen. I've seen that miniseries more often than I think anything else.
One of my favorite party tricks at writing conferences is to bring Lane to a bunch of Austenites who are generally women and then just watch them fall in love with him as he talks about Jane Austen while I stand on his arm and smile smugly.
Austen is brilliant. Like
Yes.
there's no way around it. So infinitely quotable. And that's actually a big thing. I think it's one of the things that attracts me to a writer is how quotable, how dialogue heavy you can be. So, along with Austen is Jean Le Carré, and particularly Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, but anything he wrote up until his fairly recent death. Tinker Tailor, Constant Gardener, A Most Wanted Man, all of these are depressing, by the way.
Occasionally we'll just sigh and say, no one in the world is as catty as teenage girls or British men in their 50s.
Yes.
And he means Le Carré.
I do mean Le Carré. I've recently started working an office job, and I did not realize how funny Le Carré was. People saying very obvious things in profoundly serious tones, expecting sort of rounds of applause from those amongst them. And the only thing I can think of is an old grizzled British alcoholic going, "Thank you, Percy." And these are the kinds of things that I share with my family. And we all laugh and laugh, because otherwise we will cry.
Which is another reference to something.
Yeah, that's Scrubs. Dad basically baited me into reading Dostoevsky when I was a kid, Shakespeare. You okay there?
No, I'm choking. Water you stole.
Yeah. See, if you'd let me drink it, you'd be alive now, wouldn't you?
Please, you were talking about Dostoevsky.
Yeah, so Dostoevsky, who, by the way, speaking of humor, is a lot funnier than people give him credit for. Both of us are huge Shakespeare fans.
Oh, yes.
And then if we're talking about like the modern influences, I'd be remiss not to mention McDonough. But this got to me, oftentimes when we say influences, we're talking about a writer and artist, but that's not always true. I like McDonough. I like McDonough's wider work. But when I talk about him as an influence, I'm really just talking about The Pillowman.
Mm-hmm.
And again, no shade to his other material, but that's something I saw at a very pivotal age. It was a twisting of Kafka, who I'm also a fan of, a twisting of Kafka in a way that I really liked. That became a genre-bending atmosphere that I've never let go. So I have to mention him in the influences, but it really is a particular work he did. Did that answer the question seriously?
Yeah. Before we let go of influences, we should probably talk about
Yeah. Well, especially if we're talking about the influence on this particular
on this
podcast.
particular. Yeah. So early in our marriage, we got a audio CD from a local library in Wildwood Crest, New Jersey. That was the radio play. And it was just great. I've always loved short stories. There was a lot of weird stuff on there, like Vincent Price reading a story about rats overwhelming a lighthouse. And
Best performance I've ever seen Vincent Price do. And I am a much larger fan of that actor, considering I believe he died the year I was born. I'm a huge Vincent Price fan. Easily the best performance I'd ever heard, because obviously you don't see him over the radio.
yeah, Peter Lorre had some in this collection. Agnes Moorehead had a few in there. Orwell had.
Oh yeah, Orwell,
Yeah,
he's got
The Strangers.
The Strangers, the big one. Obviously War of the Worlds, though that was not. Do yourself a favor if you ever want to know what a perfect 20 minutes, I think maybe it's a half an hour, but perfect radio drama is. Listen to Agnes Moorehead's Sorry Wrong Number.
Yes. Yeah, so I mean that's like we both love the capability of the radio play. And I remember one of the first plays I saw a version of the Christmas Carol where the sound effects were literally done on the corner of the stage. It was like a 5-person black box production, and it was just a person in the corner making the sounds. It was so cool being able to see that happen, which is something that they did in the old radio shows, like in studio in front of a live audience. Hello, listeners. This is LJ, the host, coming back. You might have noticed there's some strange audio going on throughout this. That's because the microphone we're using does not like it when we laugh at each other, and a lot of this is just me and Lane making each other laugh. Something terribly funny happened here as I tried to introduce the next section where we talk about tropes, and particularly when Lane and I first became aware of tropes as a thing that could be used either negatively or positively. And I don't actually remember now what Lane said, but it was really funny. And we laughed for like 2 minutes and completely destroyed all of the audio of me asking the very serious questions. So we're just going to pick up from whenever we both carried on.
Babe, if you're going to weep, do so in the camera.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, the microphone.
I'll add the sound effect later.
You are the grand master of tropes, so I will bow before, because literally she's got a class on this, using tropes to pitch ideas to sort of consolidate your thoughts. But
well, I mean, that class was inspired by you pitching one of your plays.
So my pitch for Promised Land was, it's the story of the farmer, his wife, daughter, and the traveling salesman, except the farmer is a dictator, his wife head of the secret police, his daughter is a criminal mastermind, and the salesman, of course, is a spy. And it takes place during an environmental apocalypse.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic pitch. It not only tells you everything about the characters here and the kind of conflict they're going to be coming into, it sets the scene in this, dystopic environment, and also is really short. He's able to deliver it very conversationally. It also sets you up for there's going to be a lot of unexpected things going on in this. So I love that as a pitch.
So Lisa, because she's the brilliant one of the pair of us,
That is not true.
it is absolutely true. Is the person who has really sort of gone in depth with tropes and both their potential and power. I sort of have a reactive boxing approach to tropes, which is I see them, I recognize them, but only so I can fist fight them in a bar. It's because I like a trope, but I also like to to shift it, to change it. But fundamentally, I think that's what everybody does to a trope. I think that's part and parcel.
Yeah, you've got to bring something new to it. But maybe not, because enemies to lovers is done so frequently and it's always delicious. I love enemies to lovers trope. But character tropes especially, you've got to layer them in and make them human, which is I think what I like to do is I'm like, okay, this character is a fop. What does that mean? What are a fop's insecurities? How deep can you get into that? Is he aware he is that trope and able to play with it some more? But just in terms of also the power of tropes and their ability to impact audience expectation, I'm a huge fan of Andrew Lloyd Webber, but he's got some real ones that didn't work for me. And I think the one I want to talk about is the one based on Wilkie Collins' Woman in White. I heard the musical first and then read the book, and I love that book so much. It's another beautiful thing that we would love to, do a full version of that reading on the podcast someday. That'd be a really cool thing to do. But the musical of this, it starts out with a single train whistle and these like dark minor chords. And I immediately, as this kid, I was listening to this, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great. I love this. And I love gothic romances and gothic horror. And I didn't know that I was in that genre yet. I didn't know how much I loved it, but I already knew what I expected from it because as soon as Walter Hartwright started speaking, I knew it was wrong because he was not optimistic. He was aware that things were wrong. He was afraid. And that's not where you start in a gothic romance, it's where you go. And that it started there was kind of like, it just was not correct. It strikes me as a weakness of the piece, not as a strength of it. And that was when I was first aware that if you are playing with tropes, you've got to do it right. You've got to bring something. You can't just resist them. You have to find a way to subvert them, which was not happening in this one. Harker is Dracula. Walter Hartwright walks into the situation, my life is going to be changed. Everything here is perfect. Absolutely nothing is strange. And then gets slapped in the face by a ghost immediately. And basically laughs it off when he gets to the mansion and tells people about it and meets the living version of the ghost. So there's an interesting premise for you. So I became aware of tropes and also the dangers of playing with audience expectation and not being successful.
And I'll add to that. So some tropes, depending on how you view it, go back to the dawn of time. If we have a collective unconsciousness, thank you, Young. If we have something like that, sure, whatever. Like there's certain stories that may be cross-cultural, universal, fundamentally human. But I remember doing some acting training with some young actors, and they were asking me, well, how do I do, I think it was vampire, it may have been a Romani, fortune teller kind of thing. And they were like, well, where do you get the voice? And my question was, well, what are you actually looking for? Are you looking to base this in reality, or are you looking for the trope? And they were like, well, we're looking for the trope. I'm like, okay, then you're literally talking about two actors, and neither of them are Romani. You are talking about Bela Lugosi, who played, I forget the character's name. It may have been Igor. It was a reused name, but it's in The Wolfman. Okay. And he plays the guy who bit Lon Chaney Jr. He plays the guy who infects him.
I thought you were being a troll again. His name is Dracula.
No, because Lugosi's in a lot of those films.
Yeah. And this is one where he's playing the guy who bit the wolf.
Who bites the wolf. You have him, you have this series of character actors who create this voice. When you hear
Yes, we can both make that voice.
And then you have a just astonishingly good performance from the person who plays Lugosi's mother, who's a Russian emigre.
They sort of imprinted on our minds as this is what that voice is.
That is what, because those particular movies were so influential on everything that came after it. And so if you understand the origins of the trope, you can really start to play. I'm somebody who likes understanding something, not particularly judging it, but understanding it. So it's like, oh, okay, so this comes from a Russian woman who escapes, is doing these kinds of performances. What can I get from that is particularly useful? And you can see how it's trickled down through the years. And you get that a lot, right? So how many Godfather remakes has there been since Godfather? How many Scarface remakes has there been since Scarface? How many Pride and Prejudice stories are there since Pride and Prejudice. This is the advantage of knowing where certain tropes, which are not universal, originate.
Where the genre conventions come from, because one of the key points of a romance novel is that you have the two love interests in some kind of identity conflict with each other. And where a lot of romance novels fall down on this is that, you have a guy who's kind of toxic. Not to harass Twilight, because that book sold thousands and thousands of books and it really resonated with people, but Edward Cullen is just mean to her and she's just dotes on him. And the difference in Pride and Prejudice is, while Darcy is mean to her, she does not dote on him. She gives back as good as she gets and makes him, one of the big tropes in the romance novel is the grovel, where you admit your love and also that you were wrong and you have changed. And that starts with Jane Austen. And we've been retelling that story 100 times because, that makes us feel good.
And also, for the record, the meanest thing he says to Elizabeth, she wasn't supposed to overhear. Like, he doesn't say...
No, that dialogue when they're dancing with each other is pretty, like, oh, do you need to talk all...
This is no great reflection of your own character, I'm sure. Yeah. But that's not the meanest thing. The meanest thing he says, she is tolerable, I suppose, but not handsome enough to tempt me. Like they're both sassy, but that's the meanest thing.
They are. I mean, that's not even getting into the proposal, though. Well, he's not saying anything mean about her. Just, everyone in your family is trash, but I guess I'll marry you because...
listen, you're so pretty that I will live with your mother if absolutely necessary.
Honestly, that is true love right there.
Yeah. So I have a version of this, and it involves Sorry, Wrong Number. So, one of the great things about reading classic literature or reading and watching things which are older is the discovery of things that you had thought originated later and realizing, oh, they did this here too, and it's just like slightly different. And I call it the I'm a very sick woman effect. So, throughout my childhood, my beloved mother, when she wasn't feeling well, not sick enough that we were actually concerned, but enough that, let's say, she didn't want to do stuff, she would say, I'm a very sick woman. She'd go, I can't do that, I'm a very sick woman. And we'd laugh and laugh. And then, in middle school, my drama teacher played Sorry, Wrong Number. And that's the line in it. It's... I'm a very sick woman just before she's murdered. Spoiler alert for a 60-year-old thing, maybe even older.
Probably even older.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I realized, this is where that came from. This is where that joke, not joke at the time, but what we consider a joke comes from. And there's so many times where that can happen. Austen is a big support, Shakespeare, obviously. Mm-hmm. But even things like watching a film from the 90s and you go, oh, I've seen that particular move before. I've seen that camera angle if it's a movie or that plot twist. Rediscovering things gives you more precision in playing with it because now you're actually dealing with references. You're not dealing with atmosphere. I think the danger with trope is the danger of living in a genre so completely is it becomes generalized. These are rules because they're the air you breathe, not choices that were made to create a particular effect.
Yeah, you start having wizards going to a particular school because you're a big fan of Harry Potter, and you don't think about, well, what does actual magic in school look like? You don't take it back to its origins there, which happens a lot in fantasy and in romance, and that's kind of why you get a lot of just kind of generic worlds. They have to rely on something else besides the world. It's like, oh yeah, this is a medieval world, we have a queen, we have a king, and people are going to be wearing tunics and leggings, and a dragon is going to come and eat their sheep. Unless the dragon looks like a sheep and they are actually raising little lizard creatures, which is, an interesting twist on that,
Yeah, and you don't want that, but I will say for the record, everybody's first is special.
Yes, yes.
Like the first time you hit the trope, it doesn't matter kind of how mediocre it was if it hits you. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of my version of that.
And I have that with R.A. Salvatore. I don't even remember the name of this book, and I tried to look it up in the past, and I haven't been able to find it, so maybe someone can tell me. But R.A. Salvatore is famously the guy who wrote Drizzt, the D&D Drow dark fantasy stuff. So, I mean, he's literally pulling from D&D. But one of his books is It's a portal fantasy where the hero has gone back, lived in our world again, and then he goes back into the fantasy world and has another adventure. And that was my first portal into the quest fantasy. Like, I read that before I read The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, and that book was so important to me. I literally read it to tatters, which is why I cannot remember it anymore. And I'm not going to go through R.A. Salvador's entire library to try to find it again.
But it sticks with you.
It sticks with me. I remember like the sassy elf in that, like the interplay of the characters in that. I can still remember like it's just it was great.
And it's so funny. And then you can become so pretentious when people don't do the trope the way you liked it the first time. So one of my favorite tropes is genuinely just a line. It's a bit. It's not quite the Shakespeare bit. Shakespeare is a recurring bit I love, which is, but my mother always said you were my father. And the father always seems to make the joke. This is a slight alteration of the original language. But no, I totally believed your mom because she wasn't a whore, unlike all the others. Am I right? It's a recurring. Prospero says it. Leonardo says it.
It's a banger of a line.
It's
gotta laugh every time.
Gotta laugh so many of Shakespeare's stuff are, no, the audience will laugh at this. It stays. The audience laughs. But one of my favorites is, okay, I'm the bad guy scene. It's like, well, how do we show he's the bad guy? And everybody has seen this where he's so bad he killed someone who is either completely innocent or someone he cared about just to prove that he could, right? I have a list of the worst version of it I've ever seen, a mediocre version I've seen, and the best version of it I've ever seen. I'll start with the worst, and it's not a terrible film, but it's an all right film. It's the remake of The Jackal starring Richard Gere, and I think it's Bruce Willis. And some generic Eastern European crime boss is having it's all the tropes in one. There's a big meeting of criminals and he's walking around and they're all sitting down looking nervous. And he's like, this person betrayed me, and he murders him because he betrayed him. And then he goes, I loved this guy, but I still killed him, which I thought failed on every level. One was just a writing skill issue. The lines were kind of generic. Mm-hmm. Two, he had a very good reason to kill him. I'm not saying I would personally kill someone who betrayed me because I don't want this to be played at my trial. But it is not, I'm just a scary guy, right?
And Marilyn Monroe didn't even jump out of a birthday cake in that scene.
That's right. So there's no advantage to it. The second one is writing-wise completely generic, but Christopher Walken was delivering those lines.
Yeah, it's the one with Johnny Depp.
It's the one where he's across Johnny Depp, right? I forget the name of the movie, but Walken is going full Walken, right? And he's telling the story, and they're aware it's a repeated story, right? Because Chris Walken asks Depp, is like, you know what happened? And he goes, you killed him? He goes, yeah, I killed him, and I loved him. I loved him. And it's the performance that does it. Then there's the best one, in arguably one of the greatest action films ever made, called Ronin. It's the scientist from the Marvel movies who's now Baron Harkonnen, but I first met him as this East German former spy.
Do we have a name for this guy?
Skizker.
Oh.
Skizker. I was trying to avoid being unable to pronounce, but sure, his name is Alexander Skizker.
Sorry.
He's from the snowy place. He's not German, but he was cast as Germans for the first 30 years of his life. He used to be beautiful, and now he's Skizker. He's got the beautiful children, the vampire children. Thank you. So anyway, we should be precise here.
I know that you're usually pretty good with actors' names.
I'm terrible with actors' names. I'm good with actors' roles.
Okay, all right.
Anyway, so Mr. Skizker is playing this East German, and he's stolen this MacGuffin, and he's meeting up with somebody, and he pulls up to a playground. And he points to a kid, just a regular kid, pulls out his gun, and the guy's like, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. And then realizes he's going to do it, grabs the gun, moves it, and he misses the kid by a second. And Skizker points the gun back at the guy, and the guy goes, why did you do that? And he goes, to prove a point. I don't know her, but I would have blasted her brains all over. I don't particularly like you. Imagine what I'll do if you don't give me my money. Right? It's so effective because there's very little dialogue from the character. He was showing, not telling. Mm-hmm. And there was a point to this demonstration because everybody's trying to get one off on the other, and reputation is a huge part of it.
And not to mention, it shows that this guy who's making a deal with him is not willing to sacrifice a child. You've shown that this guy's, he saved the kitten in this case.
He saves the kitten. Doesn't help him.
No,
this
I'm
guy does not make it out of the scene. But
Oh.
yeah, no, because all of these guys are professionals. So it's great. It's great. Also, if you want to see the father of Keira Knightley in Pirates of the Caribbean, also the Sparrow in Game of Thrones, beat a man for a scene, that's the movie to check out. His name, I believe, is... I don't know his name either. It's the film's got... And I've seen her before. And then Jean Reno and Robert De Niro. Those are the names I remember. There's also, hey, isn't that old European guy and everything? It's a good movie. Very memorable.
See, he's great with actor names. Yeah, so we are now at the point where we are longer than any of our actual episodes, I think.
We are.
Yeah, so...
Except for our double-parter.
Oh, yeah, the two-parter. That's a good one, now. Let us know if you enjoy hearing from us this way. And subscribe to the podcast, to the Substack. It's called Paperback Productions. Put a link somewhere in the vicinity of this thing. And, yeah, support us if you can. We would love to have that. And if you liked us just talking to each other about art and nonsense and movies and things, let us know, and I will make Lane do this again.
Absolutely. And if any of you are friends with Skirt, let him know he is one of my favorite actors. Like, I've been a fan of him since I was literally 9 years old. But I don't bother learning people's names who I will never meet, or people's names I do meet, or my students' names.
Or character names. We've had that problem.
Oh, yeah, I'm bad with names.
Yeah, I did not. Yeah, I guess you are.
You're terrible. Good with faces. That's how I always know Skirt's in it. I'm also good with voice. That's why John Turturro messed me up.
John Turturro messed you up?
Yeah, he's got a different voice and face every time.
And different walk, too.
Different walk. Oh my gosh, the walk really throws me off.
Cool, we're going to end there.
We're going to end there.
You want to stop it?
Do I want to stop?
You're the one in front of the computer. Can you just hit the space bar?
This space bar?
Yes. Maybe?
This one?